Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a chance to journal, take a break, get a drink. Um, so I am super excited to introduce Colleen Biggs. Hi, Colleen.
Hey, Eureka, how are you?
Good. So we have started the day with yoga. We had some tapping. We had a session on self-compassion, and super excited about our session on self-worth and some self-care. So let me just do a formal introduction. So Colleen Biggs strives to reach all women through influence to encourage the understanding that in order to be, to have, or to do anything in life that you desire, you must first gain clarity. Colleen survived an early childhood of chaos, loss, abuse, and it was through these trials that she gained the clarity to understand the magnitude of loving others unconditionally and realizing the power of community. She's an inspiration to others by helping them realize their worth, gain clarity, and show up. And she is, as you can see, the banner behind her. She does. She's the founder of Lead Up for Women, a great organization and community. And I absolutely love really what Colleen stands behind is her view on life is not about just surviving, but truly thriving. And I absolutely love that. So welcome, Colleen.
I'm so happy to be here. It's already been just a wonderful day of self-care, and I just want to honor you, Eureka, for taking the time and being so selfless to invite so many individuals to be with you today and really embrace a day of self-care. This is really just amazing. So thank you for providing this for all of us.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. And this originally, my plan was to just like have 5 speakers, and then it all of a sudden turned into like a whole bunch of lives, and then it turned into a 12-hour day, which has been so amazing about like how it's transformed, and just super honored and grateful for all the speakers and teachers who are showing up to serve for this free online event because they believe self-care, self-love, self-compassion are all so important in our lives. And especially with, what's going on right now with the whole COVID pandemic. And we're like 2 months into quarantine. And, like our self-care could be kind of be falling by the wayside. And this is why I definitely was inspired to do a day like this.
Yeah, and sometimes we think that self-care is about, getting our nails done or getting a manicure or getting our hair done. And, there's so much self-care we can do without having the external extremities that we're talking about there, right? So
Mhm.
self-care can come with breathing. It can come with, exercise, yoga, meditation, journaling, positive self-talk. Right. So I think you're really helping us redefine and understanding that it doesn't mean you have to go to a spa for a self-care day. Right. These are the most important things to work really from the inside out.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for that. And right now we can't really go to the spa or get a massage, but what you can do is, you can take a nice warm bath or, something, which I will recommend at the end of the day. But for now, Colleen, I'm so interested in for you to share your story because you had quite a difficult childhood growing up. And so can you speak a little bit about your story?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to completely date myself, and I'm going to go all the way, all the way, all the way back to when I was in first grade. So I think I was like 6 years old or 8. I don't even know how old you are in first grade, maybe 8. I can't remember. But I do remember vividly standing up on a chair where there was a microphone, and I pushed play on the cassette tape. Many of those of you maybe on the phone don't even know what a cassette tape was, but it was after the 8-track. So I'll tell you that one. And I stood up in front of an entire elementary school and I sung the song, "You Light Up My Life" by Debbie Boone. Now, I got up there as this child and I confidently stood in front of all of these children and parents and facilitators at the school that were much older than me, much wiser than me, right? But because of my belief in myself, I stood up there and just belted out this song like I was a singer. And I wasn't a singer, but I really thought I was. So I share this story with you because of the power of mindset. When we are children, we come out of the womb. Perfect. We don't have any beliefs or disbeliefs. So I want you to think about that. As we grow up, the disbeliefs that we instill on ourselves are from outside external forces or our own self-talk. Would everyone agree to that? Yes. Well, so you ask yourself, how do we deflect those? Well, let me talk a little bit more about my story. So when I was at the age of 12, so here I was, this confident young girl. I would try anything, do anything. By the time I was about the age of 12 years old, my parents got divorced. Many of us may be divorced or from a divorced family. It's not uncommon these days. But however, what was uncommon that many of you may not have experienced in that was that my father explained to my mother that I wasn't worth $100 a month. Now, when someone says that and you hear that, it leaves an imprint on you and you don't even realize it as you're going through life. And the imprint it left on me was in everything that I do in my entire life, this undertone of my belief if I'm not worth $100 a month. So can you imagine the self-worth that I felt going through life? It spiraled into, my father was extremely abusive as well, physically abusive. So this streamlined into me getting into relationships that were abusive because I didn't feel like I was worth anything more than what I was deserving at that moment. It went into me not being able to give myself fully into a marriage and wound up in a divorce. Moving forward about 20 years or so, it took me going through therapy. It took recognition from people explaining to me and helping me understand that I needed to work through some self-discovery and to start putting into motion just step by step how I can unlock myself from this cage. So I want to ask the question to all of you that are on today's webinar, and you don't have to raise your hand if you don't want to, but how many of you in your life have protected yourself because of you being hurt in the past? So what we do is we throw up a shield or a wall to protect ourselves so we don't get hurt again. It's pretty common, right? You would say, yeah. It's a very dangerous road to go down, and I'll tell you why. When we start protecting ourselves from hurt, adversely, you're protecting yourself and locking yourself away from joy, of the opposite side of the spectrum. So over the years, I had completely created this cage, let's say, of protection. I had been hurt. This was my story. I was a victim. I'm not worth $100 a month, right? We all have this reality that we create for ourselves in what we believe is true. But here's the fact. The handle's on the inside. So I use the phrase when I'm talking to the females in my organization, and this is one of the main reasons why I started this organization, was nobody's coming. We can attend as many seminars as we want. We can read as many books as we want to read. We can work on our self-discovery, but you are the only one that can turn the handle. You're the only one that can press go. You're the only one that can make the decision, yes, I am worth it. And Sophia, you can lead your life the way that you want to lead your life, and no one else needs to give you permission to do that. So what you believe your worth is absolutely true. I think it was Henry Ford that said, if you believe you can't or believe you can, you are absolutely right. So I like to use the phrase that I learned as a very small child. And I think many of us might, if we have children, we've even taught our children this phrase, which is, I'm rubber, you're glue. Whatever you say bounces off of me and sticks back on you. This phrase, I know it sounds funny, but it's so elementary yet so true. And we might have been taught that and used it on recess when we were younger. But yet, why, as we've gotten older and adults, we let judgment, we've let labels, we've let what everybody else thinks we are stick to us. Why don't we let that bounce off of us and stick back on them? Because I'm going to share a profound moment with you right now that I know Patty has heard me say before, but many of you may not have heard me say this before. What other people think about you, it's none of your business at all, because has nothing to do with you. We try to own it and we let it stick, but that's a lot, that's heavy. That becomes a lot of baggage. What you need to realize is, when somebody is judging you, they're reflecting onto you what all of their self-doubts are, their self-esteem issues. Whatever they're doubting in themselves, they see in you. So anytime you've ever had someone judge and you're like, I just don't really understand why that person feels that way about me, which is what happened to me in the corporate world for many, many years. And then I had a friend of mine say to me once, it's never occurred to me. She said, if she's pulling you down all the time, what position is she in? It's like a light bulb went off. I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. This whole time I was looking up to this person because I admired this person. Yet this person consistently tried to cut me down and I allowed it. That's the thing. That's the key here. And I know, Eureka, you stand in your truth in this. For self-love, we are responsible for loving ourselves before we can allow the doors to open for others to love us. And we can't make other people feel something, make other people love us, make other people agree with us. All we have is the power of what we can tap into, of what our worth is and what we believe. And so again, this took me many, many years. And we've talked about it. Shauna talked about it. I love, that she talked a lot about how, our self-worth comes from within. And it was really our responsibility to stand up in our truth. And so the reason why I created a community was so that women would truly believe that there's enough success, abundance, and love for every female. And Lionel, I'm not leaving you out on this. I absolutely adore men. I'm married to them. I have sons. I also have several grandsons. And men are an integral part of being in the lives of women and support. Some of my biggest mentors and some of my biggest sponsors in my corporate world were men. They believed in me more than females believed in me. So females, we are self-sabotaging ourselves here, girls. Like, we need to understand that we are not in competition with each other. Life is not about competing with anybody. It's about living your best life. And how do you do that? How do you create the happiness, the worth, and the love in your life that you need to be able to survive? And then how can you take that power and be infectious to other people and serve? Serve truly with love because you want to. I'm gonna go back a little bit real quick and just talk about selfishness. In my age of growing up, if you focused on you at all, you were selfish. And as females, even more so, because our responsibility is to raise the children, and we have an identity of now being a mother. So we start with one identity, then we get married and we have a last name that's not ours, that now we've taken on. We have a second identity. Then we have a third identity if you decide to have children. So, and then you're a mother or sister or daughter or whatever it may be. So we have all these identities, and we put all of these identities first, and we kind of tuck back who we were. And this happens for men too, who we were and what we love to do. You know, I believe that after my children left, I think I was still eating fish sticks, and I didn't even know what my favorite color was, because it's just what my children ate. And I just did whatever it is that they did, right? Like, I had to find what hobbies I love to do again. This is not how we should be living life. One of the best examples that you can give your children, that you can give a spouse, that you can give a partner, that you can give a sister or brother, is to show them that you show up as you unapologetically everywhere in every situation, and you understand your worth. That's the best example, because children and other people watch you more than they listen to you. And when you show up, you unknowingly give other people permission to do the same. You give them the space to show up as them. And, you know, I believe in God, and for me to say that I'm not enough, or that I wasn't created perfect, would be for me to tell God he made a mistake. So we get in this cycle of believing our worth is what we produce, how much money we make, what our status is, how many followers we have. It has nothing to do with your worth. Your worth comes from you just being you and breathing just every day, just being who you are. There's no need. And let me tell you, it's exhausting to try to be somebody else in life. It is absolutely exhausting. It's free and it's easy to show up as you unapologetically, knowing that it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, because it has nothing to do with you. So I do want to share that message quickly with them, Eureka, because I really feel like that's important for us to have in our arsenal of how we approach life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love everything that you just shared, totally in alignment with everything that I believe. And, you know, this is something that I say all the time too, right? It's like we have no control over what happens on the outside or what people say to us, but we do have control how we choose to react and respond, and how we choose to let it affect us.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's so difficult, you know, with our, I would say, like our world right now, to not let external things affect us. But the other thing that I wanted to ask you about was, you talked about how when somebody else says something, the rubber band and glue, right? And it's a reflection of them. And so how would you, or what would you say if it wasn't another person saying those things to you, but yourself and your negative self-talk that's saying things like, you're this, you're not pretty, you're, you know, whatever negative self-talk that goes on in your head? How can, if you use the same thing, you're a rubber band, and then it's just rubber banding back to you. So I'm wondering, you know, a way that we can visualize it or reframe it when it's something that is, that's going on internally.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I wanted to make this point today. And this is a practice. So all of you can put this in place any day, anytime. It's very simple to do. So I want you to get a timer. I mean, I use like this little timer here. You've all got our phones, right? We can use a timer on our phone. The point of that is I want you to set a timer for 5 minutes. And then I want you to get a notebook that has a few pages of paper. And when you feel a fear, I call it a fear, a disbelief, right? A disbelief, negative self-talk, or a fear, I want you to take all of those and start writing them down. No one's seeing this paper, so there's no rules around what you write. But it's very important that you write for 5 minutes. The reason why I say 5 minutes is because you start getting down below the top layers that you're really just kind of scratching the surface on what's going on with you. In the 4th and the 5th minute, there might be some emotion. There might be some physical emotion. some tears, some real fear, but I want you to keep writing. And there's no rules. You can write words, you can write sentences, you can write whatever it is. Sometimes a lot of cuss words come out when I write this down. And I am spelling them in bold and they're big and I'm underlining them. So you write all of these self-doubts, this self-negative talk, and these fears down on a piece of paper. Then I want you to go somewhere outside of your home or your shelter that's safe. Take a lighter with you. This is where I call we burn our fears. It really works. So I'm going to share a story with you. I was at a retreat with 6 other ladies. And this is not my own retreat that I did. I was invited and went to a retreat that I was part of a group for 6 months. And we did this exercise. We went outside and I am like a stellar campfire starter. I learned when I was younger. I've taught other Girl Scouts how to start fires. Like I pride myself on being able to start a campfire. Could not get this fire going. No matter what I did, I was like out of breath, lightheaded, trying to blow air into it. I had, paper, everything. This thing would not go up. So we all brought our papers out and I barely could have a little flame going and we're throwing our papers in. Nothing would light. We couldn't get any of the papers to burn and we were just like, oh my gosh, like all of our fears are just sitting there and we can't this was we were high anxiety moment, okay? So we all just took a moment and took a breath and we started talking about the belief, each quietly, the belief we had in ourselves and how we were ready to let go of these fears. And we're talking a freaking bonfire happened. I don't know what, I have goosebumps today talking about it. The flames were so high. I have never seen papers burn so quick in my life that it really lent to the moment of understanding that somebody in that circle had not let go. They could not let go of what their fears were. This practice is to give you a physical piece so you can see it, a visual piece, so you can see your fears burn. When you light the paper, watch all the letters, all the writing, all the words burn to nothing. It goes to show how quickly we can drum up these ideas of what it doesn't really exist and that we believe and how fast they can go away. And then I want you to wash it down with a hose or get a pitcher of water. I like to do this extra cleansing step because for me, I don't even want a little cemetery of ashes because for me, it still exists when it's in ashes, right? So I wash it all down with water and then there's no remnants at all that it ever existed. Then the key to the practice is to turn around, go back in your house or sit outside or however you want to do that. And I want you to take all of those negatives and rewrite those in truths, opposite of what those negatives were. If you wrote down, I'm not pretty, I don't like the way my left eye squints when I smile, then you write down, I love my eyes. My left eye makes me unique. I stand out because of it. So I want you to then take all those negatives, put them into positives, and that will change your mindset on how you're able to move forward. And the other piece is you can't ignore self-negative talk. You can't ignore it. Shauna talked a little bit about this. You have to acknowledge that it exists. So there's a step process to that. Acknowledge what's happening. And when you start acknowledging self-negative talk or listening to it, you should start acknowledging when yourself says something negative. I have said for years, oh, I'm so clumsy. I'm so clumsy. I'm so clumsy. And guess what? I knocked over every cup of water. I tripped over everything. And I absolutely was clumsy. And then I realized one day, duh, I'm clumsy because I tell myself I'm clumsy every day. So what happens? We become exactly what we think we are. If you don't think you haven't created your exact reality around you, you're very wrong. Because we create the reality and the life we have around us. We have created it all exactly the way it is today. What does that tell you? You want a different reality? Recreate what you want. Change it. So a good step on being able to get rid of the self-negative talk, once you've started acknowledging it, now I acknowledge you're going to start hearing other people say it. I have heard people say, I'm never going to make enough money. I can't afford that. I can't afford it, so I can't buy it. We can't go on vacation. We can't. Do you hear that word a lot? Can't, I can't, I can't, I can't. We know how to, talk to our kids when they say it, but we don't ever work on ourselves when we say it. So when you start noticing that negative talk, that's step number one. Now you're aware. Step number two would be work through it. So if you notice yourself saying self-negative talk, how are you going to change those words into the positive? Every time you say, I'm clumsy, I say, no, I'm not clumsy. I float around like a butterfly. I am like a ballerina. Never been a ballerina in my life. But if I believe that I'm not clumsy, I don't knock anything over, I don't trip, then I won't, because I'm so much more aware. So the second step is to be aware of it and then start saying them to the opposite. If you don't acknowledge, if you don't then create the opposite of that, work through it, acknowledge it, you have to go through it. Then when you let it go, it creates space. By letting it go, you've now created space for you to be creative and create and grow and learn. You have to remember, whenever we start squirming or feeling uncomfortable, it's because you're in growth mode. When you are in growth mode, you should feel uncomfortable. But know that the light at the end of the tunnel is, once you it's like starting a new job, right? Or the first time you became a new mother, or the first time you started driving a car or riding a bike. We're uncomfortable behind the wheel. How many of us get in a car now and just drive places and not even remember how we got there? We're so comfortable with it. So it's the same when you're working on yourself. When you're working on yourself, remember that as long as you acknowledge it, work through it, work on the opposite of it, let it go, you create the space for you to grow.
Yeah, and if I can just add one thing for people who are having a difficult time creating it into the positive, like completely flipping it over. Let's say if you've identified so much with being clumsy for so long in your life, and then saying something like, I'm not clumsy, doesn't feel right for you. One of my practices that I do is I question, like, is that true? Right? And like, it's Byron Katie's work, but like, is it really true? And then when you ask that question, then it kind of gives you perspective, like, well, I'm not always clumsy, right? There are times where I am not clumsy, so I guess that's not true, right? So it's like that middle area that allows you to shift. For people, I'm just sharing this for people who feel like it's too big of a jump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other thing is, it's just really taking one step at a time. I interviewed on my podcast this last week a female, Megan Fennoy, and she was in a very abusive relationship, and she started a foundation called the I Am Enough movement. What I love about what she started was, she started with a sticky, and she would write on the sticky, I am enough because I got out of bed today. Now, some people might feel like getting out of bed is such a trivial step, but if you're suffering from depression, or if you are having a really hard time believing in yourself because of years and years and years of abuse in your belief, sometimes it's just that first step. So I always say, give yourself grace. Give yourself the grace to have the freedom to feel, to have the freedom to be still, to have the freedom to think. And, I love to process and have like this open portal, I call it. And I kind of picture it like this open portal that I open up in my mind, where I clear everything out and it's just straight up to the universe, right? Straight to God and to heaven. And I sit sometimes and I ask God to just share with me, what do I need to know today? Or what message do I need to hear today? Or what do I need to know about myself today? And just the presence of being quiet and still leaves us from moving here to here. And we spend a lot of time here. This is the push and the pull and the create. Here is where we get to settle in and tap into our power and really tap into why we were created. Because I don't know why, I don't know about you, but I don't know why everyone's trying to fit in. We weren't even created to fit in. We were created to stand out. That's why none of us have the same fingerprint. That's why our pupils identify us as a different individual from the billions of people that are in the world, because we're meant to stand out. So wasting your time fitting in is hard work. It's like putting a round peg in a square hole. If you're a round peg, be a round peg and be the best damn round peg you can be, right? Don't try and be a square peg. That's not who you were meant to be, you know? And so, you know, that's what gives me the power to lead in what I do. And Sophia, you just mentioned something that is so dear to my heart. In the chat, I saw it pop up about being a light leader. And I use this, and I told Eureka when I talked with her last week, that sometimes being called as a leader, the burden feels heavy, right? When you're called to lead. And if you're mothers, you're called to lead as a mother. So I like to look at, I'll use Eureka as an example. I like to look at her in a visual way of holding what I would call a lamp with a light. And in that lamp is fuel, right? So there's oil. And her responsibility is not to go out and steal oil from other females or males to keep her flame lit. Her responsibility as this light leader is to share and capture and show you how you light your lamp, and then how you can refuel your lamp. And just imagine if each one of us are showing somebody else how to do that, the ripple effect of all of these lights and these lamps lighting across the world. That's our responsibility when we're called as leaders, is to share the light, because somebody is waiting in the shadows and needs to hear your message. And you don't even know who that is yet. But someone needs for you to step up, because we're each created to be on this earth to leave a mark. And if you never lean into what that is, or what your purpose is, or discover your power, then none of us get to partake in that. And that can change the world. That's how important it is.
Yeah, thank you for that visualization. It's so beautiful. I also similarly read in a book about something like the power of the ripple effect, right? And so, and this was actually to do with kindness, but if every single person were to do 5 acts of kindness, something like in 30 days, every single person would be touched with one of those kindness gestures. And it's just so amazing to think about that. And similarly, I love your light oil analogy, is that, yeah, going and just like spreading and being the light. So my question to you, though, with that analogy, in terms of refueling your oil in your lamp, how do we refuel that? The thought that came to mind was like self-care, because that's the thing that we need to do. We can't show light if we're burning the candle like on both ends, right? And we don't have any more oil, which I feel like a lot of, I don't want to just say women, but we do, right? We're constantly serving, we're constantly pleasing, we have so many different roles to play, and that we definitely, like, we burn out. And I mean, like, for me personally, I've experienced this, and it was a difficult lesson for me to learn. Last year, I was doing so much stuff that I actually, like, I fainted. And I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, and I fainted, and not like I fainted from exhaustion. And on the way down, I actually got a concussion. And so then I was like forced to bed rest for an entire week. And it was only during that time I realized I can't show up for the world if I can't even do the basics of eating properly, sleeping properly, and taking care of myself. And this is where I put a huge amount of effort, time, and growth into self-care. And I just share that story because I think a lot of people also, you know, they work and then they do this after, and then this, and we're a mother, and then we're a wife, and, you know, all kinds of stuff. And so, like, that was the lesson I learned, and hopefully that nobody has to go through that extreme to learn that lesson. And one of the reasons why I am highlighting self-care and self-love today, because it's so, so important for us to, you know, fill our cup, or fill that oil, so that we can serve, right?
Yeah.
So what are some things do you think that can fill our oil?
No, thank you. This is the perfect way to close. And, you know, Faith just asked the question. I checked the chat, and she asked the question, is there any other way that I can diminish the self-negative talk without burning? You don't have to necessarily light bonfires, Faith. So that's going to go right into, it's a great practice and it works. But one way to diminish it is to consistently replace it, which means that you're putting so much positivity into the brain and the mind that it can't function and process the negative, right? So that's the next step we're going to talk about, which is the process on self-care. So your mind is like a motherboard, is what I like to say. So this is how strong it is. It can make you sick. It can heal you. Have you ever like heard a loud sound? I use this analogy because it's easy to correlate. Have you ever heard a very loud sound and jumped? So your body physically moved. It got hot. You started sweating. Your blood pressure went up, and your pulse started beating heavier. Has anyone ever experienced that? Let me ask you, were you in danger? Like, was someone shooting you, or what? Right. We weren't, right? But our signals so quickly in our brain said, in our mind, said to our body, we're in danger, and you reacted. That is how powerful your mind is. So if you start your day every day with positivity, that is what's going to negate the negative things that you have self-talk going on. So I'm not promoting this in any way, trust me, but I'm just going to show you this because I am not like a creator of like journals or books or whatever. I've written a book with several other authors, but I got a download one day sitting there. What's my message for today? And it was to create a journal. And I created this journal on purpose because what has helped me every single day to believe in myself and be the leader to lead women is to show up. And how do I show up? I start my day in gratitude every single day. So because of that, I created a journal that has 10 pieces on here that you write 10 gratitudes. What are you grateful for today? Just list them. 10 things. That's all. Should take you 5 minutes. When you are listing everything that you're grateful for, you can't in your same breath think of everything that you're not grateful for. If you're working hard through your day to try to think of everything that you are grateful for, that's how you start your day. The next thing is you start your day by writing down how you feel. Today I feel X. Remember we talked about acknowledging it. I feel tired because I didn't get any sleep last night because I worked too late. Well, today I'm releasing all the negatives and only holding on to the positives because I am blank, 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 and blank. So now we're going to say I am brave. I am courageous because I believe in myself. So this is all the positive self-talk that you can do without my journal, but that you can do every day for just 5 minutes in the morning of sitting down. If you feel like you don't have time, you do, because you could do it in bed. You can grab a piece of paper or a notebook and sit in bed and do that. And then the next thing is, what are you doing to fill your cup today? Write it down. What one thing are you doing for yourself? Do you enjoy cooking? Maybe you should make a meal that day. Do you enjoy walking? Maybe you should go for a walk that day. But just as we need air, oxygen, that's our fuel, right? Just as we need food, we need water for us to be able to exist as humans. We need to be kind to ourselves. So these are the practices that I use in the morning. Another really fun practice to do, try this the next time you get up at all and walk around. So at lunch, when you get up from sitting and you go to get your lunch or whatever it is you're doing today, I want you to say the word thank you every time you take a step. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I literally did this from my car going into the grocery store. The whole time I was in the grocery store, walking all the way back out to my car. I think I said it like 2,000 times. You can't have a negative mindset when you are just like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And you're just saying it to yourself. You're not saying it out loud. These are easy, simple practices, Faith, that you can do that will help diminish the negative talk, because you are only fueling positivity, and they both won't be able to exist. It takes time. So don't expect a miracle overnight. I love to write sticky notes or write on my bathroom mirror that says, I am enough, I am brave. What are you struggling with today? What is the negative self-talk? What's the opposite of that you can write up there and remind yourself every day? If you see it, that's why they talk about manifestation works. Because if you see it, it's what you believe. It's what you focus on. It's what your mind starts dialing in on and looking for all day long and searching for. Bless you, sweetheart.
Thank you.
So that is my advice. Start your day with gratitude. You can end your day in gratitude. Think of one thing the whole day that you are the most grateful for before you go to bed. And what it forces you to do is go through your entire day to go kind of filter through. I think of it like a Rolodex where it filters through everything that we did all day. And then what's that one thing that stood out to you? Mm-hmm. And then when you go to sleep, we reset at night. So you kind of clear that canvas. That's why we wake up, because our subconscious comes awake. We wake up in the middle of the night with these ideas. Maybe you're getting ready to do a talk or write something, and all of a sudden it's very clear and the whole talk is in front of you, or you have the whole book written, in your head because it all came to you while you were sleeping. So going to bed with positive thoughts versus negative thoughts, huge leaps. And that's just thinking of one thing that day. And, I like the fire burning ceremony. It works for me because I can do it several times a week if I need it. And I'm not going to act like this is, there is no end to the game. There's no end. It doesn't matter if you are the CEO over 140,000 people and you make $85 million a year. You're still not going to think you're enough. It never stops. So just remember, because it never stops, it's just practice makes perfect. It's just a positive self-talk day in and day out, and really truly believing that it doesn't matter what other people think. And so that's why I use the I'm rubber, you're glue. So when they say something, I physically think, boom, there it goes. It bounced right off me and just went back to them. And you're going to start perceiving conversations when people talk to you in a very judgmental way. You're going to start perceiving those conversations differently. So when that person is speaking to you in that tone, you're going to look at them with a heavy heart, and you're going to feel sorry for, you're going to want to help them because of the way they're speaking to you, because you now realize it's not about you. And you're just going to see that conversation in a whole different perspective. Mm-hmm. So that's the advice I have for all of you today. And Eureka, I'm beyond honored to be with all of your tribe today. And I'm honored to share my practices and what's worked for my group, and to be part of leaders that are out there assisting other people in self-care. It's been wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I want to challenge everyone today. I love this, what you said, Colleen. What is the one thing you could do today, right? And I want to add, what is the one thing you can do for yourself to show yourself love today and to do it? And I think if we get into the practice of doing that in combination with gratitude like every night, I think, people will make huge progress.
Yeah.
So thank you so much today. So grateful for you to share, and you are so amazing.
Oh, thanks, Eureka.